Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. It's been quite a while since our last episode, but I was pretty busy. I had my final exams and I graduated high school, but now with the Tour de France on the program, it is time to come back. And today we're going to be taking a look ahead at the Tour de France by mainly recapping what happened with cyclocross riders that are participating in the Tour in the past couple of months. With me here to talk about that is Issam. Hello Issam.
Hey everybody.
So, as I said, we will be looking ahead at the Tour de France and we'll be starting off by talking about Wout van Aert. Wout van Aert, we spoke about him after the Amstel Gold Race, which he won. Photo finish was pretty controversial. But Issam, what happened with van Aert after that?
Well, after that, with the Amstel Gold Race, it was basically for him that he was going on attitude training to prepare himself for the Tour de France. But he had an issue actually with his. He had a colitis, I think that was the issue, and he had to go for surgery for that, which which went well, and then he could continue the progress of training. And the first time we saw him back on a bike in a road race was at the Nationals last week.
Yeah, because first he was supposed to do the Dauphiné, but because of that surgery he couldn't participate there. There were some doubts about his form. He said, I'm good, but definitely not good enough. But then came the Belgian Championships this weekend, and he won that race. How did he win that race, Issam?
Well, it was a quite an open race, but it was good controlled by the big Belgian teams, obviously. But then Van Aert went under attack with Remco Evenepoel, and they actually made sure that they had an okay gap. I think it was around a minute or something. And the only one that was able to close that gap was Edward Teuns. And those three basically went to the finish line, and Van Aert was the one who was the strongest in the end in the sprint and was able to become national champion.
So Van Aert is now national champion both in cyclocross as on the road. Pretty special, good performance, and I think he took away the doubts about his form there immediately. He looked pretty strong in my opinion. I mean, yes, Teuns came pretty close in the sprint, but at the same time Teuns sprinted to a couple of top 10 places in last year's Tour de France as well. So I think Van Aert is definitely there, and I think he might not be at 100% as he was last year, but I still think he's not that far off that 100% either. And I personally think that in the first two stages of this year's tour, you immediately have to consider Wout van Aert as one of the favorites for the stage and therefore the yellow jersey.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to see what Van Aert is going to do, especially in those, the first week in general, and I think the first 2 weeks, because obviously he's going there to support Roglic for those 3 weeks. But I think in the first week, especially, he's going to have his chances, and he can go for that yellow jersey for sure. However, it's going to be very tough because there are a lot of contenders that are also in very good shape, which he has to hold off.
Yeah, and that's the big difference compared to last year. Last year he got, three opportunities. He won two stages and then I think he had one or two other opportunities in sprint stages. But this year Jumbo Visma said they would give him more freedom. I think he deserves that and he will have Teunissen to help him. And I think Van Aert isn't this type of rider that needs a full train. He just needs Teunissen and maybe Tony Martin or one other guy to just put him in a good position and he can just serve from wheel to wheel and then put down a powerful sprint. And I personally like it that he's going to get a more free role, and in the first week, there are indeed plenty of chances for him.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, he's indeed not the type of guy that needs a whole team working for him. I think almost every stage that he has won, he always was. He had to do it like only with one guy or maybe with two guys, sometimes even alone. So, he knows how to survive in the peloton alone, or at least with one or two guys. So, I think he's ready for a good Tour de France, and I think we're gonna see a lot of good results from him.
There's also been some talk that he could potentially stay up there in GC for quite some time. Not really strange to hear that, considering he got second in Tirreno Adriatico. What do you think about that?
It would be fun to see that happen, but I think that he should come with a very extraordinary performance. I think the first 2 weeks maybe, um, because there are climbing stages in the first 2 weeks, but they are not as long, and they're not as difficult as what's going to happen in the third week. And I think the third week definitely is going to be a hard task to stay in yellow if he has the yellow jersey, and it just really depends on his on his shape, if he's able to have a continuous flow of that shape and be good in all stages. So we'll see. It's going to be very interesting to watch also if he has any GC ambitions.
It's going to be very interesting indeed. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the yellow jersey at some point, and then I think it will be a matter of just holding on to that as long as possible. Take a look at the mountain stages in the first week. You have stage 8, but that's a downhill finish, so in my opinion he should be able to survive that. I don't expect big things. Stage 9 is a uphill finish, but it's to Tenius, not the hardest climb. I do see him lose a bit of time there. But then again, if he's opened a buffer in the time trial and the other stages through bonification seconds, who knows? Mont Ventoux is another downhill stage, then stage 14 and 15, both also downhill stages. But then this is where the issue comes. This Tour de France does lack serious mountain stages, but as soon as you come to stage 17, I mean, we finish on the Col du Portet, and I think that is definitely too much for a rider like Van Aert. Like, we already saw it in Tirreno, that was a climb that suited him, but Col de Portet, it's really a tough climb, and I think he just loses too much minutes there on riders like Roglic, Pogacar, Carapaz. These riders, that I think they will put 3 or 4 minutes into him at least there, and then you're just done. I mean, you can take as much seconds as you want elsewhere, but that's just too much.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think, like you said, I think that the first 2 weeks he has a chance, and from there on, it's gonna be very difficult to keep the yellow jersey. But it would already be fun to just see him in a couple of days in that jersey alone. I think riding in a yellow jersey is just already a great experience, and let's hope for him that he's gonna be able to do that.
Then let's talk about the main rival of Wout van Aert. That has always been Mathieu van der Poel. Van der Poel, he didn't race the Amstel Gold Race. That was around the last time that we made a podcast. He also didn't do the Giro after that, but he went on to do mountain biking. How did that go, Issam?
It did go well. It did go well. We saw a couple of moments from Van der Poel, that he was very strong. But I think that the shape he was entering in the mountain bike was not particularly the strongest of like, if you would compare it to the previous time he was on the mountain bike in 2019. Um, and I think we could definitely see some weaknesses, especially in his climbing. Um, but it was still, he was able to hold himself off, even in Novo Mesto, where he had a very tough time, but was almost, was dropped by Pitcock, but was able to hold on second place. I mean, those two were, uh, they were dominating a elite field of mountain biking. There was no one missing. I think everybody in the mountain bike field at that moment was in good shape, and those two were just able to go off into the sunset together. And Van der Poel was not even able to follow Pitcock, so you have to realize how good Pitcock was. But I think Van der Poel was having an okay mountain bike campaign, and for him there's only one goal, and that's the Olympics. So we will see a way better Van der Poel in the Olympics.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The Olympics are his main goal. He didn't come there in the greatest form. He was still good, of course. He won both short tracks. I think he was on the podium in Nova Mesto, and he got another top 10 place. I think it was good enough. I mean, if he wants Olympic gold, it needs to be better, but he probably knows that himself. After that, he switched to the road bike in Tour de Suisse, and I mean, what I saw there, I honestly could not believe what I was watching there. We had the second stage. The first stage was a prologue, and then the second stage it was a climb at the end, a hill, pretty steep, and you see like top climbers like Carapaz attacking, and Van der Poel, he follows them, and then in the downhill, it was wet. He just, nah, he's a cyclocross rider. He knows how to do those downhills. He just keeps on going, and then when they come on the flat, that was just so impressive. He just starts pacing himself, and he starts taking a corner, and through every corner, these riders behind him need to sprint a gap, and he just keeps on pacing, and he just drops them from the wheel. Then eventually Schachmann is the only one in his wheel, and he just starts sprinting with 300, 350 meters to go, and he wins that stage. I mean, this is one of the most phenomenal rides I have once again seen by him, and he keeps on surprising me.
Yeah, the achievements he has done in Tour de Suisse was something else. Especially that stage 2, but I think also stage 3 where Quickstep was basically trying to bring Alaphilippe to prime position. Obviously, it was the last 200 meters it went up a little bit, or 300 meters, and it was like an uphill kind of sprint, and then it's flattened out at the end. But the way he went there as well was just something else. There was nobody even close of getting in his wheel. He went off, and I think there was even a time difference which wasn't counted, but I would have given a time difference of maybe 3 to 4 seconds, and that was done in maybe less than 250 meters. It's you know everybody that was maybe doubting him in the mountain bike, I think Tour de Suisse was really a moment to say, look, I'm still here. I'm gonna be ready for the Tour de France, and I am gonna be one of those guys that will be favorites for those hilly races.
And then this weekend, he raced that national championships in the Netherlands. He withdrew from the race. Personally, I wouldn't look into that too much. I think it was just a case of, okay, my legs aren't great. It's a tough race. Next week, that's the Tour. I am riding the Tour with Tokyo in the back of my head. He's probably not even going to finish the Tour. So personally, I wouldn't look into that too much. I'm talking about that Tour. He has Tokyo in the back of his head. In what type of form do you expect him to come? Do you think he will be in peak form for at least the first 2 stages to try and get that win that his sponsors really want and the yellow jersey?
Well, we have seen him being able to hold a very high shape, or like a very in peak condition. He can stay very long. But I think, however, that the Olympics are going to be the main goal, and the Tour de France, he's very happy to start there with a Pro Conti team. But I don't believe that he's going to be 100% at the Tour de France. I believe that he's going to be in decent shape to be able to win stages, but I don't believe that he's going to be there trying very long attacks or anything else. I don't see that happen.
No, I don't see that happen either. I think he will definitely be there on stages 1 and 2. Then you have a couple of flat stages. Those are more for his teammates, Merlier, who we'll talk about later, and Philipsen. Then we have stage 7, which is another opportunity for him. I'm not even... he probably will continue through the Alps, because after that there's still a few stages, maybe, potentially. But I think he will pull out somewhere in the middle of the second week so he can focus on Tokyo. And I think that's a wise decision, considering he really wants that gold medal.
Yeah, I think the plan was they were talking about 2 weeks, and then after 2 weeks they would step out of it. And I think the Tour de France, even if he does win only one stage, or he doesn't win any stages, the Tour de France is still going to be a good experience, because I think what most of the time happen, you can actually use that as a preparation for something else. And I think in a way that's probably what he's going to do there. He's going to be going to a 2 weeks race where he's going to drop weight as well, which is probably crucial for the climbing part in the mountain bike. And he's just going to be in very good shape going into that Olympics in Tokyo. So the goal is Tokyo, and I think it would be very great for him if he can get 1 or 2 stages in the Tour de France. Also good for his sponsor. But I don't believe that he is going to be there in the Tour de France in 100% condition. I think, however, he's going to be good enough, like I said, for stages.
Let's talk a bit about that team, actually, because Tim Merlier is going. Tim Merlier, he went to the Giro after we last spoke. He won the first stage there, very impressive sprint. We were planning to make a podcast, but then my exams popped in. But very impressive stage win by him there. He got another third place. He was a bit sick, then needed to pull out on the first rest day. Not pleasant for him. But after that, he recovered pretty quickly from that disease he had. He won the Ronde van Limburg, was 9th in het Haagland, won Elfstedenronde, was pretty decent again in the Baloise Belgium Tour with a second place. Was again decent here at the Belgian National Championships where he got sixth. I think Merlier is definitely someone to keep an eye on out for the sprints. I mean, he showed it in the Giro, beating Caleb Ewan. But then, isn't it weird that they're taking both Merlier and Philipsen? Because these are both very rapid riders. I mean, that you bring Van der Poel and then one sprinter, it makes sense. Yes, you can use Van der Poel in bunch sprints, but he isn't the real mass sprinter. He has trouble with positioning himself, and Philipsen and Merlier, they're probably just faster as well. But Philipsen, Merlier, and Van der Poel, isn't that just weird?
It's very weird. I when I saw it first, I had to look twice to realize that that was going to happen. Um, I don't know. I don't know what the strategy is there. I'm gonna be very honest. I think who is going to work for who? What is gonna be the strategy? Who's gonna be the lead out? I mean, they're both fast sprinters. I think Philipsen showed himself in several races that he is able to sprint with the best. And Merlier is the same thing. And I think, in my opinion, I think what's gonna happen is that because Merlier did the Giro and Philipsen didn't do any Grand Tour, that Philips is gonna have priority. But then it would be very weird that they kind of bring Merlier with them as well. It's almost like they're not sure that Philipsen is gonna be in good shape or something, or I don't know. It's very confusing. But for I would hope that Merlier is going to be the lead sprinter.
To me, it looks like Merlier was just in a surprising good form after that Giro, after that illness he had. And they were like, Merlier has already proven it. We just have to take him in this form, which makes sense. And then they probably were like, but we also can't throw out Philipsen, so let's just take both. But they really need to make clear decisions. Like last year, Trek, they had 3 sprinters. They got criticized for that by Tom Bona. Okay, you can think about that what you want, but at least they decided, okay, today this guy is sprinting. The last thing you should have is what Philipsen had when he was in the Tour with Christoph 2 years ago, that in the final, Philipsen is supposed to lead out Christoph, Philipsen looks behind, Christoph isn't on his wheel, and he decides to sprint himself and then gets a top 5 place, because then you will always have the lead out guy thinking, if this guy loses my wheel, I get to sprint myself. And if you're full of confidence, which you need to be, well, it just doesn't work in your sprint train. So they need to make clear decisions. If they say, okay, today Merlier goes, tomorrow Philipsen goes, fair enough. But it needs to be clear. And don't go for both, because then things are definitely going wrong.
Yeah, I don't think they will go for both. I think, like you said, they were surprised with the shape of Merlier, which out of nowhere I kind of came back in a very decent shape. And I think Philipsen was promised to do the Tour de France. That I think that was something already said somewhere in February or something, that Philipsen would be doing the Tour and that Merlier would be doing the Giro. So I think they were, it's very hard to say to a guy that you have bought, like, okay, you're not gonna be doing the Tour de France. We're not gonna select you. So I think they, Philipsen was going to be in that selection, for sure. And Merlier wasn't actually, doing that, but obviously he didn't do the complete Giro. So maybe there is something also going on, that Merlier wants to prove to the team and to others that he's able to do a complete Grand Tour. Maybe that's an issue. I don't know. It's interesting for sure. But I hope that Merlier is going to be the lead sprinter, because it would be very fun to see not 2 but 3 cyclocross riders having the main stage in the Tour de France.
I think it will be interesting, and only time will tell. These are the cyclocross riders that are doing the Tour de France. I mean, Turgis is also going, but I mean, there's also some half cyclocross riders going, but we don't really discuss those, because then we can go on forever, and there's just too many riders who have done something in cyclocross. Anyway, it will be interesting to see what these guys can do. We will be making some podcasts throughout the Tour de France when there are performances that need us to do that. And I think we should maybe make a prediction. How many stages will Wout van Aert win this Tour de France?
He has won a stage, I think, every time he started the Tour de France. So I think it's a safe bet to say 3 stages. I think 2. I would go for 2.
Yeah, I would also go for 2. I think Van Aert definitely will get the opportunities 2 stages. And for Van der Poel?
I think Van der Poel will be able to get 1. I think he will get one stage, but then he will struggle to get a second. But he will definitely show himself in that Tour de France, and he will definitely show, you know, how brilliant of a rider he is.
I expect 2 stage wins for Van der Poel as well. One in one of the first 2 stages, and then later on in a breakaway from a select group. And then finally, Tim Merlier, do you expect him to win a stage, or is that simply too hard to tell considering we don't really know who the sprinter is going to be on that team?
Yeah, it's gonna be hard, but let's just say that he's gonna be the lead sprinter, considering the fact that he is probably in the better shape. Um, I think he has a fairly decent chance because the field is not gonna be that much different from the Giro. Obviously, I think Ewan is gonna be in a better shape than he was in the Giro, but I don't expect something special from him. I don't know. I think Malia has a shot of winning one stage, and I definitely think that he's gonna be able to get a top 5 here and there. So definitely gonna be in the front there.
Yeah, I agree. A stage win for Merlier definitely possible, but here comes the most important thing. They really need to launch him in a good position because sometimes the sprint train at Alpecin is a bit of a mess. However, I have seen at Alpecin they are bringing Ricard, they are bringing Dillier, they are bringing Esparagli. These are really the lead-out guys there. And if you use then Van der Poel maybe in the early position, or even if you don't use him, I think they have a decent train. But it just needs to come out. And if everything falls into its place, then I could definitely see Merlier win a stage. Well, then I think we've covered it. This short preview for the cyclocross riders of the Tour de France. Would like to thank everyone for listening and thanking Issam for joining me today to talk about this.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And as I said, we'll be making some podcasts throughout the Tour de France, and I will catch you guys then. Goodbye.